Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for our Empower Green Careers, which is the place that connects young people with professionals who work in the fields of energy efficiency and environmental sustainability. We are so grateful to have here with us today Dan Meharg, who is a park ranger and education specialist for the US for the Park Service. I am so excited, Dan, that you were able to join us, and please go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody for letting me show you. I worked for the National Park Service for 31 years, and I saved pictures over the years of some of the interesting things that I did. So I'm going to share them with you. And if you see an interesting picture and you want to know more about what's going on in the picture, feel free to put a note in the chat or unmute, and I'll stop and I'll answer the question. And we'll also have some time at the end too. So my job as a park ranger education specialist was to create hands-on programs. Sometimes I worked by myself, and sometimes I worked with a team of educators, including Francesca. So we'll talk more about what we did together later. And our goal was to help people of all ages have like an aha moment or a discovery or something that they figured out about a park that they didn't know before. So you can see like these kids are out in the water with a net, and they're going to catch fish, and they're going to get to see fish that they've never seen before. So they're going to go, oh, wow, this is so cool. And the kids on the right are learning about how salty the water is in different bays and oceans near them. A lot of times I worked in places where there were historic sites. And so we were helping people find a love for historic places. Sometimes that involved dressing up in like a Civil War uniform and giving kids little model guns and having them practice drilling the way that Civil War soldiers would have drilled to help them find a love for a Civil War fort like this one. I also worked at a place called Morristown National Historical Park. At one time during the American Revolution, 5,000 soldiers cut down trees and built log huts. And so we had volunteers dress up in the authentic clothes. We gave them the actual tools that the soldiers would have used, and we taught them how to build log huts. I worked on a World War II era destroyer. And sometimes we would take the destroyer out to sea, and we would invite the public to come with the veterans, the sailors who used to be working on that ship during World War II. So there are some of the veterans. It was really cool to see them like on their ship again, reminiscing with their wives and family members and visitors about what it was like. Here you can see they still know how to do their chores. I thought that was so cool. They still remembered how to tie the ship up to the dock. I worked at a different park where we had an old Nike nuclear missile base. So we had kids meet with the veterans in their old work areas and talk with kids about what they did there. That was an extremely stressful job because you never ever want to fire off a nuclear missile. And yet the soldiers had to practice how to do it while they knew they were never, hopefully, ever going to have to do it. So here you can see we then let the kids build their own little rockets, and we put a kite up in the sky, and we let the kids try to hit the kite with the rockets. Here you can see the kite's view. We had a camera on the kite. Nobody ever hit the rocket, or nobody ever hit the kite, though. It was a little bit disappointing, but I worked at a park that had officers' quarters from the 1940s. And so we recreated life during World War II in the 1940s. A lot of the officers' wives used to like to collect beach plums and make jelly and jam out of the beach plums. So we used the 1940 era's kitchen to make the jellies and jams. We decorated the house to look the way it would have looked during World War II, and we played 1940s music, and we had volunteers dress up in the uniforms of the time. We had a victory garden next to the house so that we could grow vegetables and then do 1940s era cooking for people. I think this was cookie making for Christmas time. We had a area of the park where they used to rescue ships that were sinking, and they did that by firing a rope out to the ship, and then they would use a special cart to bring everybody in off the ship over the ropes. And so the Rangers learned how to use the equipment, and we would demonstrate it for the public. The park also had a signal gun during World War II. If ships didn't stop and give a special code, the signal gun would shoot out at them and make a big splash in the water to remind them that they had to stop. And so we had the kids learn the process of firing the stop here shell out into the water. We also taught kids about firefighting and how to be a firefighter. And I should mention here that there are a lot of other jobs in the National Park Service besides teaching kids about cool things. There are also actual firefighters. There are people who are actually biologists who study the fish. There are people who are actually mappers and make maps of different parts of the National Park Service. And then there's the running of the visitor center. You can see the two guys on the left, they're answering the phone and answering questions that visitors have. In some ways, that's the most important job that I had because it helped people figure out how to safely have a good experience in the park. We had a radio broadcast that we had to give every morning. So you can see Ranger Marin there is giving the radio broadcast. So there was script writing and radio broadcasting that had to be done as well. So helping the environment, that was a big part of what I did as a ranger. So here I taught kids how to collect data about bird behavior. And so we were watching birds' behavior and then recording that data. And you can see we did it on this map here in several locations in New Jersey and on Long Island, all at the same time, so the kids could all pass data or trade information with each other about what they were seeing at different national wildlife refuges and national parks. A lot of visitors like to go canoeing, so we tied in water quality testing. How clean is that water you're paddling in is what we asked the people paddling. And so we taught them how to do tests to find out whether the water is polluted or clean, and then learned what they could do to make it cleaner. I worked at a park in New England where frogs and salamanders crossed rainy roads in the springtime, and they would get run over. And so we would have volunteers over 40 miles go out to areas and help the frogs and salamanders cross the road safely. The salamanders, they're yellow-spotted salamanders, and they're super cute. They're about this long, and they're black with little yellow spots on them, and they don't mind you picking them up and helping them get across the road. We also documented where their pools were, where they went to lay their eggs, and we had students help preserve those pools and keep them from being turned into housing developments and roads. As I mentioned before, we wanted people to have aha moments or discoveries about the kinds of fish that live in the water around our park. So you can see different rangers here helping kids learn about that. We did a big project where we helped kids restore native plants to their parks and to their schoolyards. So every third bite of food that you need, every third bite of food that you eat needs a bee or a butterfly to pollinate a flower that then becomes the grapes that you eat or the tomatoes that you eat, even the chocolate that you eat, the cotton that you wear. All requires bees and butterflies, and we have unfortunately fewer and fewer of them in the United States. And so to reverse that effort, if we can get more native plants that have grown here for 10,000 years or more to be put back in our yards, in our parks, and in our schoolyards, we can help reverse that trend of declining pollinators. So we had kids collect seeds in the fall, and then they grew the little seedlings in their classrooms over the winter. And they did some science tests to figure out what kind of soil the plants wanted to grow in. So plants are picky, and certain plants want certain kinds of soil, maybe some like acidic soil, like orange juice acidic, and others like a mild soil, like coffee kind of soil. And then the kids brought the seedlings that they grew in their classrooms out to the park, and they also picked some areas of their schoolyards and grew them there. You can see them kids planting what they grew. And then they collected data to see whether the pollinators came back to their schoolyards and parks. And it was super gratifying because you could see an area before they did the project with no bees or butterflies, and then later on lots of bees and butterflies. And by the way, these kinds of bees, they don't sting people. They're mainly interested in flowers. So unless you swat them or hit them, they won't bother you. EcoLife is a project that I did with Francesca and other interns. So we asked experts to come and teach us about how to help people figure out how to make their neighborhood and our park more resilient, more able to withstand things like floods and climate change and pollution. And we found that there were a lot of experts in Italy. So we asked Italians who could speak English to come over here to the United States and teach us these concepts. And it was really exciting for me because I had been a ranger for 15 years, and I had just told people about interesting plants and animals. I had never figured out how to teach people about how to save them or how to make the park more resilient. So it was super empowering for me for the last 5 years of my career as a ranger to learn these new things from our Italian experts. So here's some of the things we did. We had kids pick out the kind of food that they could eat that would have less of an impact on the environment. So food that comes closer to where you live. The trucks and the trains that bring them, if they come from a nearby, won't be putting a lot of carbon dioxide or pollution in the atmosphere. But if they're coming all the way from South Africa or from the Chile, the bottom of South America, they're going to create a lot more pollution. So picking the kinds of food you eat really helped. I'll just give you that as one example. We had kids grow their own food. We had kids explore old parks, old forts, and figure out, or historic places, and figure out, what do you love about this place, and why should we preserve it, or how can we preserve it, and how can we share it with other people? So kids came up with amazing ideas of how to like market the idea that people should come and visit this very cool fort. We played games to learn about how carbon dioxide pollutes the planet. So I don't know if you kids know, but learning through gameplay is like a really good way to learn a new concept. We learned also what we could do to stop pollution from happening or stop carbon dioxide from going into the atmosphere. So you can see there Francesca hard at work teaching some kids how to do that. We asked the kids, how does a soda bottle or a candy wrapper wind up on a street? And so we had them go down to a beach next to the ocean and see what kinds of candy wrappers and bottles were winding up on the shore. So like if we found a whole lot of Dunkin' Donuts straws, we thought, oh, well, this might be a good idea then to bring those straws to nearby Dunkin' Donuts and say to the owners, you know, what can you do to warn people that their straws are winding up on the beach? Somebody asked, how is your role contributing to sustainabilities in your park? So you're sort of seeing my answer to that question. So we had kids do different activities where they would see it, pollution happening, and then come up with creative ways to solve those kinds of problems so that we'd have a healthier park, healthier neighborhoods as a result. Let's see. We had kids learn how to make their own cleaning supplies so that the chemicals that get dumped down the drain and then out into the ocean aren't so harmful. Oh, this was a very cool activity. So in the New York City area during Hurricane Sandy, we had terrible flooding where neighborhoods that had never been covered with seawater got covered during that hurricane, and homes got wrecked, and it was a really terrible time. So we had kids using these paint trays come up with, well, build little houses, which was fun for them, and then create little models to see what kinds of things could we put in the environment that would help protect these homes here. We saw that if you grow a lot of plants right along the edge of the ocean, they can act like a sponge and absorb the water much better than, say, piles of rocks. We taught kids how to ride bikes and fix their own bikes when they broke. And these kids were from Staten Island and from Brooklyn, and a lot of them had never ridden a bike before. So we can help end climate change by getting people to ride bikes more than use gas-powered cars. We taught kids about urban camping and how you can connect better with your environment and with nature if you're camping. And there are city parks in New York City where you can actually go camping. So we taught kids how to open up tents and hang out in tents and learn how to connect with nature that way. And then we tried to have kids put all of these concepts together, and Francesca and our coworkers created these really neat little icons that were like examples of problems and solutions, and kids could pick which icon they wanted to put on the poster. So they could put let's say a car that was creating pollution, and they could put that icon on, and then they could set up icons near it that might be the possible solution to those problems. So let me stop there just because does anyone have any questions about any of the pictures that they saw? Because I can go back to. No,
We have a quick question.
sure.
Why were the people in Italy experts at the soil and cleaning up the environment?
Francesca, can you answer that question?
Yeah, so that was very interesting. What like myself and other people brought to this national park was really a concept learned through a program all focused on sustainable design. When you think about an environment and all the complexity about an environment, all the things that go into any aspects of our life, we always have to input. We have to put the concept of environmental sustainability in every action that we do. As Dan was telling before, it's there is you can learn about plants and how important they are for the environment, but also you have to think, how are we going to protect those plants, that wildlife? And at the end, it comes down to really small actions that everyone can do in their daily life. If you think about during your program with Empower Schools, you learned about energy efficiency, how like turning off your lights, for example, can have a greater impact even on the national park. Because if everyone all together we decide to reduce the amount of energy that we use, we will need less of this energy, so we will pollute less. Then we have other like examples that come from the concept of the circular economy. That was what really we were learning a lot in Italy about the circular economy, the systemic design approach. And that it's all about like how to solve complex problems by having no waste, no waste. So everything, every input that you have when doing a process, doesn't create any waste, because waste, when you waste energy, waste material, that's when you really can create a lot of damage to the environment. So in a lot of these activities that we brought, to the park, and in general, to even the production of objects, for example, there is the concept of no waste. I can give you a more like clear example, and but just very brief. When creating, for example, an object, you can either, if that object breaks, you can either throw it away into the dump, but or you can fix it and then keep using it. So that reduces the amount of waste that you have to put into the dump. And that was also because waste in dumps, they create a lot of pollution, a lot of leachate, and that goes into the ground, methane that goes into the air. So at the park, it's super important when Dan was also describing the waste found at the beach, that also can create a huge damage for the wildlife that is there. So how can we prevent all of that, starting from behavior of people in the first place? So that was what was done during that program called Eco Life. I don't know if I was able to answer your question, Jocelyn. Like it was
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
would add to that. So as you can tell from when you're listening to Francesca, is there are a lot of important things to think about in order to make our world a healthier place, a more resilient place. And what the Italians did, so they've developed concepts and ideas that are super useful that aren't here in the United States yet. And so by bringing their expertise to this country, we were able to begin the process of figuring out how to make those concepts a reality here in the United States. Is super valuable. And one other skill that the Italians had that we used a lot was they're very, very good at collaborative thinking and collaborative planning. And so that way of getting everyone's ideas in one place and figuring out how as a group are we going to move forward is a super useful skill that they brought as well. So I don't know if they had particular classes in that, Francesca, or if you just learned that as you were going along.
No, honestly, collaboration was very important part of that, of working in groups, super important. We cannot solve problems individually. We really have to work together as a community, as a classroom, to really find the best solutions.
So I'll just go to the career part of this then. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect people of all ages in natural and historical places and help them fall in love with the place. Because if they fell in love with the place, then maybe they would want to do the kinds of things like turn off lights to fix things instead of throw them out. Thinking if the place I love needs me to do this, I will change how I do things. We got people to discuss together and collaborate, as we just talked about, and then from those collaborations and ideas, engage in civic action projects, such as growing more native pollinating flowers in their park, or committing to reduce the amount of water that they use, or the amount of electricity. Let's see if I can. So to be successful as a park ranger, you can see us all there in a planning meeting. You need to be really committed to teamwork, to planning really carefully, to be resilient. So if your plan or your idea doesn't work, what's plan B? What's plan C? To be a park ranger, you have to love learning new things. So I had been a ranger for 15 years, and then when Francesca and the other Italians came, I had to learn all kinds of new things, and I loved that. Have to be curious, and you have to have empathy for people, plants, and animals. And I think that empathy part is super driver to help you do the other things on the list. When I was a kid, I liked taking classes on nature and the environment. I took lots of history classes, and I took classes on civic action and making the world a better place. So back in the 1960s and 1970s, we would take classes about pollution, and we would learn, oh, pollution is bad, but we didn't ever really learn things that we could do to end pollution. So I was super happy that at the end of my career, I learned how to do that. I liked creative writing and reading really good literature. I practiced public speaking because as a ranger, I had to present to the group activities. And I liked theater. And the reason that theater is so valuable is that if your audience is bored, like I can't see you guys right now, so I can't tell if you're like super bored or super into this, but that's what theater does, is it gives you a clue of like, how's my audience reacting to me right now? And what can I do to make our connection stronger? My mother really loved birds and plants, and she taught me a lot about nature. And as I mentioned several times, I don't need to go into this again, but I got to learn a whole lot of new things thanks to Francesca and the other experts from Italy about what we could do to save the environment. So to get into a career as a park ranger, you need to be a high school graduate. Some careers you only need 2 years of college, and you can even start your career while you're in college. And others require 4 years of college or a master's degree. I just had 4 years of college. I never got my master's, but I was able to have do a whole lot of things just with 4 years of college. But again, there are many careers in the Park Service where you don't even need college. You can just like go into a training program that the Park Service might have, and I'll show you those in just a moment. I took elementary and secondary education because I was working with a lot of teachers, so I wanted to be able to understand what your teacher goes through every day. So I became a classroom teacher for a while too, so that I could understand that. It's good to know history, to know biology and environmental science. I took those classes in high school. Some people take park management classes. I never did, but I think they're super useful in when you're a supervisor and you're running a visitor center, let's say, or doing the kinds of things that I did, but I learned on the job. Literature and writing. There's a lot of things that as we were planning that we had to write down that we were planning on saying to the students. And GIS mapping, I used that a lot when I was in the park, because it was if you want to show like the areas of the park that are being impacted by, let's say, trash that's coming out of storm drains, it's super useful to have a map showing that to people. And I had to work with our GIS mapping people all the time. It's a super useful career. So if you're at all interested in mapping, I would encourage you to look into that. So there's a website here. You might want to take a picture of this website. It describes how you can be paid from ages of 15 to 30 in a special Park Service program. It looks like it's an 8-week program during the summertime. And it gives you the kind of work experience that when you want to apply for a permanent year-round Park Service job, you can use this experience. There's a program called Pathways, so that when you're in college, you can already start working for a park like in the summer, and then get a career after you graduate. And then there are internships. There are paid internships, and actually Francesca eventually did one of these internships. It was called Student Conservation Association, and she was given a stipend for housing and for food, so she could come and continue to do the EcoLife program for the park. And this is the SCA's website. Okay, so Any additional questions that you in the class might have?
No, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for joining us for this meeting. And in case your students have any other questions, maybe after thinking about the presentation that then showed, presented, have any other question, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm sure that with then we can communicate and answer to any question that your students may have.
Thank you again. We appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Have a great day, rest of your day. And thank you so much, Dan.
Yep, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.